All right, Mike, welcome back. Did you have a
Hey,
good one?
thanks. I did. I am excited to talk about today's book.
Me too. And you're going to see me be quite conflicted on this book. It surprised me in a couple different ways. So,
Yeah.
as you all have probably picked up, or at least if you're part of the pro show or the bootleg stuff, a lot of times Mike feeds me books, which I like a lot because I would read like the exact same type of book every time we would read a book. Like that's just how I'm wired. And I like the fact that I get encouragement to branch out. I was not expecting this book to be the way it was. Let's just put it that way. I was not expecting it to be the way it was. We're going to talk about that more.
That's fair.
Yeah. But before we do that, we need to get into follow up. So let's hit follow up. Mike, you
All right.
had two different action items, but you also have an update for the library, which I want to hear about. So can you tell us the update for the library?
Yes. Okay. So the library is my private community, private PCAM community that you have heard me struggle through. What exactly does this look like? What's it gonna offer? Who's it for? All that kind of stuff. The last several episodes. And talked a little bit about community in the Tiny Experiments book specifically as a big section at the end of that. And I remember talking through like I want to build community, like I'm after some of the same things, but I think the way that mine is going to look is a little bit different than what Anne Laura is describing. So yeah, that was basically, I was wrestling through all that, and I have a new webpage which, as we record this, is live but not really available to the public
Mm-hmm.
yet. Like I'm not promoting this per se. I made a brief mention of it in the newsletter because it was relevant to something that I was discussing. But by the time this goes live, it should be good to go. So library.practicalpkm.com. And what I've landed on is 3 different tiers for this. So
Okay.
listeners know that I was struggling with, making things accessible, but also offering like a deeper dive sort of a thing. So the basic one is $47 a year. And that's just the private community, what most people think of as a private community. It's a circle group where you can talk about things and download things and share things. And then up a level from that is basically what I'm learning from Jay Klaus's Creator Lab with all
Okay.
the live stuff and all the courses and all the workshops, and 2 hybrid cohorts, I'm calling them. One is the life theme, one is practical PKM. We sold the life theme cohort last time we did it for $500. The practical PKM cohort was $1,000. I basically took all the material from both of those, chopped them into videos, made those available inside the community as the self-paced videos. You have to go through them in a sequential order, but then there are also live calls that you can hop on at different points. We've got the first life theme live call actually scheduled for next Friday.
Okay.
And so basically anybody at any point can hop on one of those live calls, say, this is where I'm at with this process, and can you give me feedback? And I think this is the best version of both of these. The feedback I got from the Practical PCAM cohort was that it was awesome, but it moved really fast. So now you can kind of go at your own pace, but also you can get live help whenever you need it. Along with that, there's sessions from different experts, quarterly personal retreat sprints, hot seats, office hours, a private podcast feed. So if you can't keep up with all the live stuff, you can just download it all on your podcast player and learn on the go. That one is $597 a year.
Okay.
And then there's a VIP one, which basically adds quarterly one-on-one coaching with me
Nice.
for $1497 a year. And those are kind of entry-level prices. As I add more stuff to them, it will go up. But yeah, so you can go to library.practicalpkm.com for all of the details on that. And I'm super excited about this.
Yeah.
As I was building this page, some of this stuff has kind of existed in some way, shape, or form for people who have joined the cohorts. Because basically when you joined the Practical PKM cohort or the Life Theme cohort, previously you got access to the library, and the experience in the library I always thought was pretty good. But then when I started asking people, hey, I need to launch this thing and I need some testimonials, who would be willing to share it, there were a lot of people who shared some really great testimonials about the library. And honestly, the library as it exists right now as we record this is like nowhere close to where I know where I want it to be and where I know it will be. because it hasn't been a focus, but this is kind of the focus. So like Life HQ is the signature product. That's the thing that you buy if you really want help with your workflows in Obsidian. And then if you want to take those to the next level and learn from things that other people are doing, other examples, like that's where the library comes in. And I'm really excited about how these are going to complement each other, and also the way that I'm going to be able to interact with people and help people in a live setting. Every time I do that, it's a great experience. So looking forward to doing that on a larger scale.
Nice. And I can echo. I told you this before. I mean, the site looks great, right? Like I know the community because I've been part of it and all the other stuff, so I know that stuff's good. But the site's looking good, so I'm excited for you to start pushing it. When do you plan on starting to do that?
Well, I guess I just kind of publicly committed to it. So by the time this goes live, it'll be up there.
It's great.
Yeah. So like you mentioned, you're in the community and you have access to stuff, and I appreciate the kind words, but honestly, you haven't seen anything yet. I've been talking to Christopher, who's my community manager, and we've got a whole bunch of ideas for stuff that we want to add. Like as we record this, it's the last day of March, but next week we're going to start these quarterly personal retreat sprints. And basically there's going to be live video calls that people, if they opt into this, they can do their personal retreat, they can share their quarterly plans. And then every week we'll do like if you're worked with a virtual company before, you're probably familiar with like a daily stand-up. It's sort of like that, but at the week level. So this is what I'm going to accomplish this week. And just by like showing up and sharing what you are going to be doing, there's accountability built in. So like if you look at Ali Abdal's productivity lab, like kind of the whole thing is like double your productivity. The reason that you're able to double your productivity is not because of what he teaches you. It's because of the accountability that's provided in a public place like that. So I'm basically going to be doing things like that in my own way. We call it win the week.
That's awesome.
But there's going to be a whole bunch more live stuff basically that people can get involved with, because when you show up and you do it live, like that's when you start to see the results. It's not when you buy the course that you get the payoff. It's when you actually implement it. So a little bit of positive peer pressure for people who need a little help, reaching their PKM potential.
Nice. Very cool. All right. So you ready to move to action items? Would you like me to go first, or do you want to keep going?
I can share mine.
Okay, go ahead.
So there were two. One was consider what's missing, and I don't think I've done a real great job of that yet. I think that's probably like a bigger reflection thing. I think it does have a little bit of overlap with the next one though, which is use plus minus next for the weekly review. I have started doing this. I think we talked about this even in the last episode, my shortcut. I've used that now for a couple of weeks, and I do really like it. I find that it is much more helpful to capture that stuff in the moment when I am feeling either really great or really frustrated with something. Yep. And then I can go back and review it at the end of the week. So I know like pure GTDers are going to be mad at me, but this is the best form of the weekly review I've ever experienced.
That's great.
I'm not going through every single project, but I am, capturing these things as I go. And then at the end of the week, I'm looking at, what went well, essentially that's the plus. What could have gone better? That's the minus. And kind of like what ideas did I have, or what things should I be focusing on next? And the key here for me, I think, is that because it's in Obsidian, it's all captured to that weekly note. It also gets connected to the quarterly plan, which is the personal retreat process. And so I've got, right there links to the quarterly personal retreat. So I can just open up all those things, look at them side by side, and looking at those things all the time creates the alignment to keep moving in that direction.
That's great.
We'll probably talk about it with Inner Excellence, but there was a specific line in here that I really, really liked. Do you happen to know what it was?
In the book, like a line in art? No, I don't.
Okay. So dreams are feelings you can control. Goals are outcomes you cannot. Yep. So that's essentially what my personal retreat is.
Okay.
It's anchored in that ideal future, and it's something that I'm moving towards. It's an intention, but it's not a goal. Like I have to get this exact thing done. So yeah, I just feel like this really has hit the mark for me. It's really clicked. I will share the link to the shortcut in the show notes if people are interested in it, but I will say that it does require actions for Obsidian in order to work. I shared it in my newsletter not too long ago, and people were saying that they missed that part of the post, I guess, but so I just want to call it out here. If you download the shortcut and you don't have actions for Obsidian installed, it's not going to work, but because it requires some specific actions or hooks that actions for obsidian adds to shortcuts so that you can put these things in that weekly periodic note. So
Nice.
yeah, I'll say green check mark for that one, and maybe yellow. I don't know what's a 0.5, like a half
yellow dash
for the other one.
yellow dash and then a big red X, right? Like those are our grading schemes.
Yeah.
All right, so I had two. Determine a pact. So based on tiny experiments, pact stood for purposeful, actionable, continuous, and trackable. So it's something that was purposeful, actionable, continuous, or and trackable. And then along with that one, it was determine the pledge, platform, and practice. I am similar to you in terms of I'm a green check mark on one of them and I'm a yellow dash on the other one. But I need your help, Mike. So I'll tell you what my green check mark is, and then I'm going to ask you for your help on the second one. I've determined that I want to write something about the intersection of STEM and faith, right? So STEM is science, technology, engineering, and math, and faith. And I want to write that 5 times out of a 7-day week. Okay, so I'm trying to think. It's purposeful, and the reason why it's purposeful is because this is something I want to do. It ties into my day job. Like, there are a bunch of different motivators that say this has a purpose. The reason why it's actionable is because I can write things, right? Like, and I'm not making it to where like I have to write like a 10,000 word essay 5 days a week or 5 days a week. It's just something. Like, I just have to write something, a paragraph, a couple paragraphs, a thought on an idea, something like that. It's continuous because I can do this over and over again. It's trackable because I can figure out whether it's 5 of the 7 days. I've given myself 2 days off for whatever I want to take off for, or maybe just a slow week. So I think this makes sense, right? Like, so I think this is a decent one. Now, this determine the pledge. So that's kind of the pledge, right? Is I'm going to do this. I want to do this for 8 weeks. Okay, so I want to do 5 days a week for 8 weeks, and that's 40 different things. So I've given myself that I'm going to write 40 different, at least little blurbs. Okay, here's where I struggle, Mike. I don't know what platform to use, and I do analysis paralysis like you wouldn't believe on this, right? Like, okay, so do I do some blogging platform? Do I do more of a Substack type platform? Do I do something like a newsletter platform? Like, what do I do? And Mike, I basically am asking you to just tell me the answer, and I'm not allowed to rebuke. Like, I'm not allowed to have any rebuttal. I'm just going to say, Mike, I will do what you told me to do because you know the best platform for this. Whether that's true or not, I don't care. I just want you to tell me what platform to use.
Okay, so I need a little bit more clarification though.
Okay.
What is the end result going to look like when you publish every day for 5 days of the week for 8 weeks? What does each one of those things look like? Is it a certain number of words? Or if it's not a certain number of words, is there at least a range where it's like anything between 2 sentences and 500 words? Or
so like I'm not going to answer your word thing because it's going to be that I have thought about and communicated my thinking on an idea. Okay. Now, if that takes me 200 words, I'm okay with that. If that takes me 1,000 words, I'm okay with that too. Because like there are going to be ones where I'm going to get really excited about it, and I'm just going to go off, right? Like, and I'm just going to write forever, and I might break those down into smaller chunks. There you go. That's the answer.
So yeah, but I guess what I'm after is this short form or long form? It sounds like it's at least medium form.
Yes, it's short to medium form. I do not expect it to be long form. I will break those long form ones into multi-parts.
So while you can technically do like long form posts on Twitter/X, I don't think that's really what you should be doing with this. And I don't think you want, the atomic essay, I'm going to share these images on social media necessarily. So there should be an online home for these series of writings that Cory is going to make.
Okay, let me double down on this. You're absolutely right. Like, I want this to be something that I can point to, and people can go back and see all this stuff, and it's not mixed in with a social media feed. So yes, you're on track here.
How comfortable are you using Markdown, or do you prefer like the editor where you can select the text and make it italic, make it bold, whatever?
I'm good with Markdown. Markdown's great.
Okay, but what's your preference? Like, how do you naturally write?
I don't care. Like it doesn't matter to me. Markdown would add a cognitive layer to it, but what I'll
Okay.
tell you is I won't go crazy. Like I'm not going to do advanced markdown that's going to make me think really, really hard. It's going to be like, double asterisk for,
Yeah.
whatever,
No,
double underline.
what I'm really after is how do we eliminate as much friction as possible from the
Yes.
process?
Yes.
So if you are, thinking Markdown, then you're going to want to use something like Ghost,
Okay. I don't
which
think in
is,
markdown. So
yeah.
that I don't inherently think in markdown.
Okay. So then, how comfortable are you setting up websites?
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just talk through a couple of these options. In my mind, there are a couple directions that you could go from this. One would be Medium, where
Okay.
you just write and you publish and they get it in front of your audience. I don't think I would necessarily recommend that though, because you don't technically own that.
I know. Yeah.
So another option would be Ghost, which is kind of like WordPress for Markdown. You can like add paywall layers to it and memberships and things like that. So if that's at all on your roadmap, that's all built into Ghost, and that might actually be a pretty good platform for you. Are you familiar with Matt Birchler, A Better Computer?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so he's got a YouTube channel called A Better Computer and a website that is built on Ghost. I'm trying to think of other people who have used Ghost in the past that I could point you in that direction. I don't really know off the top of my head. But essentially what Ghost does is it eliminates a lot of the options in terms of setting up a true website. It's a blogging platform. So you create a new post, type in your text. You can add an image, according to the theme dimensions and things like that. But you can't, I want this over here and I want it to look exactly like this. You just write your words, you publish your words. It's got good SEO tools. You can build an email list off of it if you want, that sort of thing. Substack is also an interesting option. Substack, though, I think daily might be a little much. The way I see people using Substack successfully, not that there's not, daily newsletters that would use Substack, but there's really a lot of effort that goes into crafting a specific message, and it's high quality, and they share it. The cadence isn't all that important. It's just, this is a really great post that I send out, or a really great piece that I share every week. And so you want to subscribe to it. I think what you're after though is really the reps, not really like growing the list necessarily at this point. So that might not be the right thing for you. There's obviously WordPress. At this point, don't think I would touch WordPress with a 10-foot pole.
I agree.
The reason being the CEO is kind of going nuclear on a bunch of companies that have long been contributors and participants in the WordPress ecosystem. And I know it's going to anger some people the way that I've described that, but I've used WP Engine for a long time because I don't like using, like rolling my own backup solutions and stuff like that. And the fact that the owner of the what's it called? Open source product, right?
Yeah.
Is just like, no, you owe us now millions of dollars and I'm going to destroy your company that you've built like on a whim. Like that's messed up. So I'm in the process of moving off of WordPress and I'm going to be using Ghost, full disclosure. Out of those different options, I think maybe the easiest way to get started would be Medium. The one that would give you the most control would be WordPress, and Ghost is kind of in the middle.
Okay.
Now, so for just based off what you told me, I actually would probably recommend either Medium or Ghost, depending on how comfortable you are with owning the things that you are writing. I think if you're just getting started, owning the ideas isn't like owning that content isn't necessarily as important because you're still refining the ideas. Maybe they're not at the point where, this is the thing I actually want to plant my flag on, and I want this artifact, this thing that I actually wrote, I want that to live on my server forever.
Yeah.
If you are at that point, then probably Ghost is the way to go. Now, if you are looking for the easiest way to get rolling with this, Medium also integrates with a tool called TypeShare.
Okay.
Which is one of those like write one place, share everywhere. It's the tool that the people behind Ship 30 for 30 have used. And so hypothetically, if you wanted to write something and then decide what's the best format for this, you could publish it to Medium. You could also publish it to LinkedIn. You could publish it to X or Twitter. They also have like these atomic essay tools built in, so you could take the longer form thing and use it as an image if you really wanted to. Basically, you can repurpose it and share it multiple places. They've also got their own, social platform. So you have your page basically that you can point people to with all the things that you wrote. It's not, as nice as like a ghost site that is custom tuned to the look and feel that you want, but it is actually a pretty easy way to get going. So I'm not going to say the specific one is the one that you should use yet, but out of those options that I shared with you, like which one sounds like the best solution for you or the most appealing?
So I've looked into Ghost, and I like the idea of Ghost. I have looked into Substack as well, and I have a fairly similar sentiment that like I just don't think what I want to do makes sense for Substack right now. Right? Like that might be what it turns into, is where it turns into like a weekly thing and then it's a Substack thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want to look into TypeShare, right? Because that sounds appealing to me. Are you familiar with a thing called Write As?
No.
Have you ever seen Write As? So it's write.as. And I've used this before in different ways, but like the tagline for it is type words, put them on the internet, right? Like, and it's basically like microblogging almost. Like that's what it's made for. Is what I struggle with though is it is too limited, if that makes sense, right?
Okay.
Like I've wanted to like tweak things and do things, and I can't do it in Write As just because it's not meant for that kind of a thing. So that's the one that like almost intrigues me the most, because like I've already used it. I know what I'm doing. I get in there and I just put in words, and go from there. But I don't know.
Well, having said that, I actually have a different recommendation for you,
Okay.
which is micro.blog.
I'm familiar with micro.blog as well, but yeah, I don't remember it as much though.
Okay, so micro.blog is by, I want to say, Manton Reese.
I think you're right.
And essentially it's microblog posts or long form posts. So you can actually determine the length here. But if you have the shorter ones that can appear on the social networks, then you can actually cross post those things. But you can have your own domain. You can own your own content. Let's see. I'm at the page right now. Looks like the basic one is like $1 a month.
Yeah.
If you want the cross posting to Mastodon, Threads, Blue Sky, and other services, then that's $5 a month. If you want email newsletters, all that kind of stuff, it's $10 a month. So it's pretty affordable.
Yeah.
And I think if you're just trying to figure things out, this might be a great way to get rolling, because they've got an app that you could capture ideas to and publish pretty easily. So if you're interested in Write That As, which I'm not familiar with, but just based on your description, this is the one that all the nerds use.
Yeah, micro.blog. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'll look into that. Thank you. But that's my like follow up on that with me real quick next week or next time we record, is like, did I actually commit to that, or did I pick that platform? I know we're going long, so hang in there, because I have to ask you one more question that I've wanted to ask you
Okay.
on show. How's your gaming going?
Well, so that's long-term follow-up.
That
I
is
bought
long-term.
the Steam Deck, and it's off and on.
Okay.
I definitely have put a lot of hours into Skyrim.
Okay.
I ended up buying the Hogwarts Legacy game because it was like $15 on one of the sales. I haven't played it yet, but my son really likes it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say it's going well. I really enjoy the Steam Deck, although I've just been sticking with the game that I've played a bunch already, and haven't really ventured out into anything new yet.
I'm happy to hear that you're playing, so we can move on now. I just wanted to hear that like it wasn't in a drawer collecting dust somewhere, or had become permanently one of your children's devices. Like that's what I wanted to hear. So good.
No, it's cool. I even brought it with to Florida. I don't think I used it more than like 10 minutes on the plane, but
nice.
Yeah, most days I play a little bit though. So
okay. All right, good deal. Are you ready to move on to our actual book at this point?
Let's do it.
Okay. So today's book is Inner Excellence by Jim Murphy. And this book came about because it got famous because an NFL football player had it on the sideline and was reading it. And then it kind of took the world by storm for a little while. And I didn't know what we were getting into when you suggested this book. You said, "Hey, let's read Inner Excellence," and I was like, "Okay, sounds good." I've heard of it, popular from a popular media standpoint, but I didn't know what I was getting into. Basically, this book, I'm going to try to summarize it as concisely as I can, and correct me where you think I'm wrong. This book is a sports psychology book that is meant to be broader than sports psychology, but it's really a sports psychology book by a guy who used to play for the Cubs and then has now worked with a bunch of professional golfers and athletes and fighters and all of these individuals about essentially performing your best and how you can overcome obstacles to performing your best. That's my very concise introduction to the book. Mike, what do you think about my introduction?
I think it's mainly accurate.
Okay.
So it's on the website for the book itself. It says the mental training system that has developed world champions, empowered athletes to become world number one, and most importantly, transform their lives. So I agree that he's a coach who works with these world-class athletes primarily. I think what he talks about in here, though, is so much broader than that.
Oh, yeah.
And I know he does a whole bunch of speaking. I find it hard to believe that the world-class athletes are going to his speaking events. They probably have like one-on-one coaching relationships with him, and he's texting them.
He texts them, right? Like he says it. He says it multiple times in the books. I was texting this professional golfer while they were on like the 18th hole, and it's like, okay, good luck.
So the speaking thing, I don't know how big a thing this is for him, but that's got to be like the corporate stuff, right? Yeah. So I don't know how many corporate people would consider Jim Murphy a mentor, but there's got to be a bunch, or he wouldn't have that on his website. He's working with the people who are number one in the world. He doesn't need to do the speaking if he doesn't want to.
What, and did you see, so I went to his website too and just did a little bit of background on him. He got connected with the guy who is the CEO of Yum Brands. And through that, he ended up getting a bunch of like international clients. So he does these retreats, where he teaches all these principles in these retreats. So it's like he's got his fingers in a bunch of different stuff. And I would say like, I guess the phrase I didn't use before that would make sense is like leadership development too. So it's this idea of like performance and leadership development. And he's really trying to refine these ideas around performance and leadership development. So with that very, very high level introduction, Mike, we didn't talk about this in the pre-show, but I think we should hit this chapter by chapter, even if we don't go crazy long on every chapter, because it doesn't really chunk any other way. Like he doesn't break it into parts.
Yep, agreed.
He doesn't do it really any other way. So I say we put the preface and the introduction together, and then we just do chapter by chapter until the end as we roll through. Does that sound good?
It does. Let's do it.
All right. So let's hit the preface and the introduction. This is where I'm going to start off, and forgive me for starting off a little bit of with a little bit of negativity here, but like I feel as though, or as I'm reading this book, it was very circular. So I don't know if you got that same vibe or if you got that same impression, but like he introduces things here in the preface and like talks about them for a good period of time that then we're going to have a whole chapter about later. And he's also going to hit it in like 3 other places. And like, so, and I get that, like there's a saying that goes around, the world, tell them what you told them, or, it's, well, I forget how it goes, but it's like, tell them again, tell them what you told them or whatever it is.
Tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them.
There you go. I couldn't get it, but,
classic sales.
I feel like he does that, right? Like, I mean, he does that here in a bunch of different ways. So, the biggest thing that came out of the preface for me were these 10 new presuppositions that you have to work through. I'm not going to read all 10 of them right now, but there are these 10 presuppositions. Self-centeredness is one of them. And he drives home this idea of self-centeredness and self-mastery and these ideas strong throughout the book. From the introduction, I think he hits on one of his core tenets of the book: love, wisdom, and courage. So the inner excellence model is based on these three things: love, wisdom, and courage, which because they allow you to get the idea of belief, focus, and freedom. So, and he kind of links those three together. Like love gets you to belief, wisdom gets you to focus, and then courage gets you to freedom. Ties me into Jocko Willick's book, like Discipline is Freedom, and all this other stuff. But like, so you could tell he has read, and he's read broadly. Do you remember, Mike? He wrote this book over what, like a 5-year period or something like that, I think is what he said.
I don't remember that. No.
It was a long period of time though. Like his first draft of this book was not a short. It's not like he wrote this one in 6 months. He wrote this over a long period of time. So I don't doubt for a minute that he was reading broadly and widely and thinking about like how the concepts he was bringing in and what his spin was to put on these all around this idea of inner excellence. So that's going to be my launching point for the preface and the introduction.
Well, the things that stand out to me from this, he mentions the quality of your life is based on 3 elements: your inner world of thought and feelings, beliefs, and desires, your frame of reference, your mindset from which you can see the world, and your relationships. And then he talks about the quality of your performance being based on the 3 elements that you hit on: your belief about who you are and what's possible for you, your ability to focus, be fully engaged in the moment, and your freedom to play like a kid. And then there's the presuppositions, which I agree we don't need to go through all of these, but right away I like this book because one of the presuppositions is the map is not the territory.
Yep. There were multiple times in this book, Mike, where I was like, oh, that Mike said that 100 times, right? Like he's talked about that 100 times. So keep going.
Yeah. So spoiler alert, I guess, for the end, like if I were to fast forward in my life and all of a sudden have done a whole bunch more research, worked with a whole bunch more people, and have a whole bunch more validity for the things that I believe and teach inside of the life theme cohort, I probably write a book that looks a lot like Inner Excellence.
Okay.
In fact, my newsletter today, as we record this, was kind of about the life theme stuff because I just did a webinar about how to do a personal retreat in Obsidian. And the first part of that webinar was a crash course in the life theme process where these 5 different steps. One of those steps is to create an image of your ideal future. And that's a lot of what he hammers home in here. But there are a lot of concepts and things that he references. And I'm like, oh yeah, I see how that connects now, having read this book. So this was not at all really what I expected.
Okay.
I guess I don't really know what I expected, but I was sort of thinking, tactically in the moment when you are feeling this is how you, calm your nerves and you sink the putt. And there is some of that stuff in here, but it's a lot more conceptual and visual and tied to that idea of, your ideal future. He frames it differently, uses different words, but that's kind of what this is all about. And I guess, spoiler alert, I really liked it.
well, and I would say it's way deeper than what you described, right? Like it's way deeper than the sinking the putt. Like, how do I calm my nerves to sink the putt? No. Like in his mind, and he doesn't say this anywhere, but in his mind, if you get to the point and your nerves are going crazy and you're trying to figure out how to sink the putt, you've missed the boat. Like we needed to fix this problem way back in some of these core fundamental areas. And that's what the nature of the book is. The nature is these core fundamental areas. It's where I have a little bit of a rub with the book, but like I have this, like, to say love-hate is too strong, but like I have this like-dislike nature of the book because there were times when he was just too like fluffy, ethereal, spiritual for me. Right? And then there were times where I was like, man, this guy's, he's nailing it. Like he's hitting it right on the head. And I remember like I'm reading this and sitting there and I'm like, Katie, I can't figure out, Katie's my wife. I was like, I can't figure out if I like this book or if I don't like this book, but I can tell you that like I like parts of this book a lot. Like I really like resonate with parts of this book a lot. So I mean, let's move on to chapter 1. Chapter 1. So
if you don't mind, I'll kick this one off because I got to follow up to what you were just saying that is rooted in chapter 1. Okay. So chapter 1 is Maslow and the Maserati. And this chapter talks about the affluenza virus.
I loved it.
Okay.
I love this part.
So this is where everything that you were saying about this sounds a little bit too, for lack of a better term, woo-woo, just like manifest your abundance sort of thing. I think of that think it was maybe a Geico commercial where
Okay.
they're out in this surrounded by the mountains. They're looking at this lake. The guy's like, yeah, this is so nice. I think because they cover RVs or something like that. And then, one of the progressive people shows up. It's like, too bad it's over now that people know about it. And then there's this influencer there with her phone taking a selfie, like, hey fam, I'm just out here practicing gratitude, manifesting abundance. Like, that's the picture I kind of had up until chapter 1. Okay. Because this affluenza virus, he talks about how, like, this is basically something that needs to be solved. Like, this is a problem.
Yep.
Okay. And there are 5 things that the affluenza virus idolizes: possessions, achievements, looks or physical appearance, money, and status. And then before that, he talks about Maslow's 9 characteristics of self-actualizers and stuff like that. So it's all kind of ties together. But those 5 things, I've heard it said this way, that if you want to make money with a product, help somebody become healthy, wealthy, or wise. And there's truth in that, just because that's what people want. It's not, manipulative, and I'm promising to get you to this thing, but that's what people are kind of naturally looking for. And just think about your own online behavior as you're scrolling through Instagram or whatever, and the ads pop off the page to you. What are the ones that get the clicks? What are the ones, and you got to be real. Like, why do I click on this? Not, why do other people do this? Why do I click on this? It's because they're promising me something, a result, an outcome that ultimately I want. And so they're just tapping into a desire that really isn't, even if you don't realize it, like it's there. So like these 5 things, I feel like this is kind of the root of all of the online buyer psychology that I've read for so long, and kind of, hits on, why I think it feels a little bit icky sometimes. It's not necessarily manipulative. This was sort of feedback we got about some of like the mastery stuff and the Robert Greene stuff and the influence stuff. You can use it for good or bad, and really just painting it in those broad strokes isn't the right thing to do. That's not really effective. That's not seeing it for what it really is. But this is kind of at the heart of the way that most people think, and addressing that at the beginning of the book, I feel like changes the tone of the conversation, at least for me, for all the things that are going to come after this. Had this not been there, I'm looking at this like out of the side of my eye throughout the rest of it.
I could not agree with you more, right? Like, this was the first time where I was like, okay, like I'm in, right? Like I'm in it. Like, even like the chapter titles, right? Like, I don't love the chapter titles because I think they're very like obscure, and like I was like, Maslow and Maserati, okay, whatever, right? But then he gets to this affluenza virus, and I was like, dang, like he just nailed it, like boom, 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 because you just see it like all over the place, and then you get into the idea of how those things undermine, so much of our life, right? Like, they undermine so much of our life. And I would be hard pressed to say like somebody doesn't look at that list of 5, and it's only 5. That's what I love about it too. Like, it's 5 simple things, and he makes it into the acronym PALMS, right? So
yeah, I didn't love that, but I like the things.
but the things are great: possessions, achievements, looks, money, and status, right? And I just like, man, like, what a well done thing. I get my first action item out of chapter 1, right? So that
wow,
tells you
that didn't take very long.
I know. So he asks the question, he goes, everybody worships something. What do you worship? Now, granted, I have a project on worship right now, so worship's very attuned, right? Like, I'm very primed to it at this point in life. But it's like everybody worships something, which I completely agree with. Like, people are worshiping something, and the action item comes into, what do I love the most? What do I worship? Like, is it one of these of the palms? Is it one of these 5? Is it something else? Like, am I happy with it? Am I worried about that? Like, and what I like about it is he tells us to analyze, what do I dream about? What do I worry about? What do I get upset about? Those are probably the things that you're quote unquote worshiping, or the thing that you love the most. And it's not even like from I mean, at least I don't remember it being from like a judgment perspective. It's just do you like that? Are you okay with that? Like, just analyze it, think about it, and are you okay with that? And I was like, man, that is a really, really good action item to have, is like, are you okay with the things that you think you love the most, or that you worship the most? And it hit that one hit hard.
Yeah. So the 3 questions to identify that: what do I dream about? What do I worry about? What do I get upset about? I think those are great questions. I might have different questions and do use different questions in the
Yeah.
life theme process about creating the specific image of your ideal future. But uh, again, like he's really got a detailed and I'll say battle tested way to get you to that point, starting with, what are you really after with
Yep.
this? And yeah, great way to start the book.
All right, I'm ready to move to chapter 2 if you are.
Yep, let's do it.
All right, chapter 2 is where the wild things are, pride, fear, and the center of the universe. And in this one, he's going to jump into the idea of ego, right? And he's basically going to say that self-centeredness and ego is the root of, I guess, what drives us away from inner excellence, right? That it brings up fear, it brings up all of these, false idols, if you will, like things that you think you want to go for, but then when you actually go for those, they end up undermining the thing you really wanted to go for. And then we start to judge ourselves, and through this judgment, then we get pride, fear, and envy. And this is his, like, I would say, like, the core of his argument is the idea of ego and the idea of self-centeredness. And we need to get rid of the idea of ego and get rid of the idea of self-centeredness. Those are the big things I got out of chapter 2.
Yeah, there actually isn't a ton in chapter 2. So he's got this path to fear. So at the beginning, you've got this choice, and then self-centered, self-conscious, ego's amplified, critic, trickster, monkey mind, doubt, anxiety, frustration, and self-rejection. Like there's this inverse pyramid there. But the critic, the trickster, the monkey mind, that's actually chapter 3. So
Yeah.
I think the point he's making here is valid. The root cause of fear is self-centeredness. When we become self-conscious, we want to feel better. So we kind of naturally compare ourselves to others around us. Mentions that pride has no pleasure in having something, just having more of it than the next person. And that's totally true. So this just kind of shines a spotlight on where the battle really is. And he says in this chapter specifically, in the battle for your heart, your thoughts are crucial. So this is sort of where the battle is won or lost, is in our mind and in our perspective, but doesn't get too much into, how to actually apply that because, again, chapter 3.
Yeah. I think my last quote out of chapter 2 that I really liked is, our mind needs to be trained, renewed, and rested daily.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, that's a really good way to think about that, because I'll do that for other things, but for some reason I don't do that with my mind. It's like, oh no, I can just keep going. I can just keep, burning the candle at both ends, and everything's going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. It's like, no, it's not. Like, you really need to think about how you train your mind, how you renew your mind, how you rest your mind every day.
Yeah.
All right, so let's go to the critic, the monkey mind, and the trickster. He calls these the greatest opponents that you'll ever face. The critic.
Yep.
The critic is, not surprisingly, the person who delivers harsh judgment, right? So they're going to judge and compare, and they're going to pull on that ego to figure out, he says the ego is the root cause of this, of the critic. The monkey mind is the over-analyzing. You care too much, right? Or you just can't get out of your own head about something. That's your monkey mind, leading to overanalysis. And the trickster leads you to believe the lies that you tell yourself. So the trickster is like, oh, well, I'm not as good, as so-and-so at running, jumping, writing, making YouTube videos, whatever it might be. And you really deal with, like, deception. Like, so they're this internal thing that's constantly trying to deceive you. And I would say that later on in the book, he's going to say where that comes from, right? And that comes from fear, and that comes from some of these other past experiences that you've had that are leading to that. But it's these lies. I thought these were a good 3. I didn't really take time to think about whether I thought there were more than the critic, the monkey mind, and the trickster. But I was like, yeah, I can see all of these manifesting in my life at some point, in a negative way. So I was like, this actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, off the cuff, it seems to me that those 3 are basically it. I think you can get more specific, but they kind of largely fall into those 3 different buckets. There's also a very important point in this chapter, which I had heard before, as in the context of expressing gratitude, where judgment and curiosity cannot coexist. So basically, he hits on this later on in the book as well. But basically, your mind can't have more than one of those emotions, I guess, active at a time, which is why when you express gratitude, it immediately zaps the negative feelings. Obviously, if you really want to hold on to it, you can. But if you're really authentically expressing gratitude, it's impossible to have that anxiety still.
Yeah.
So, like, which one are you gonna embrace, judgment or curiosity? And then he talks about the D slide, which is disappointment, which leads to feeling devastated, which leads to being defeated, and then ultimately I'm defective.
Yep.
I can definitely see the truth of that, and identifying yourself on that slide is a humbling exercise.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
But then there's a really important point, which kind of first time you hear this, but this is going to be reflected again throughout the rest of the book, and that's the difference between circumstances and thoughts. So circumstances are the facts of the situation without opinions or emotions, and thoughts are the emotions and the judgments. That's basically, that's part of the thoughts, and it's often imparted without us ever really noticing it. It kind of reminded me of the second arrow that Andlar talked about in Tiny Experiments as it pertained to procrastination.
Okay.
The first arrow is the fact that we're procrastinating and we're a little bit behind, but the second arrow is the one that really hurts, and that's how we feel like we're a worthless piece of trash because we can't get ourselves to do the thing.
Yeah.
That's thoughts. The fact that we are a little bit behind because we procrastinated, that's a circumstance. But then the judgment that comes along with it, well, I can't follow through on these things that I've said I was going to do. That's the thought. So that's immediately what I thought of, and that helped illustrate the difference between those two things for me, which I think is important. And like, if you don't get that, think about how different the rest of this book could potentially be. So worth calling out here.
Yep. All right, let's go into chapter 4, the daring in the twilight, the pillars of extraordinary performance. So now I'm gonna call out something that I struggled with is the wrong word, but like I felt like he couldn't. Not that he couldn't. I felt like he didn't like delineate between who this book was written for and who it wasn't written for. So like he talks about performance and he talks about competing and he talks about, like competitors and all this stuff. And that's fine for an athlete. And that's fine for somebody who's in business and they're trying to win the contract or whatever it is. But for the normal average person, like I don't think of myself as competing on a daily basis, right? Like I don't walk in and it's like, oh, I'm competing against this other person for this thought idea today. And it's like, no, I'm just not doing that. Like I'm just showing up and I'm trying to do the best I can. So like performance read, at least for me, it read too much like sports and competition. And I'm okay with that, but it didn't generalize as well, or at least the way he talked about it, I didn't feel like it generalized as well to the normal everyday person. This is an area where like, okay, go ahead.
Well, so I don't know a whole lot about your world, but the immediately I thought of when you started mentioning like the different places where performance is important. Sports obviously can only be one winner. Business that makes a lot of sense too, but in the academic world, wouldn't tenure be a version of this?
Okay. Yes, but I don't have that impacts my life. If I was in like a state institution or an institution that actually had tenure, so CCU doesn't have tenure. So,
okay.
So we're a year-to-year contract. So it's like, I really am not competing with anything other than me wanting to do good work every day, like me coming in and wanting to do work. So I'm competing against myself to want to come in and to do good work every day. Like that is the competition. Now I can very much see this if I'm trying to get grants or if I'm trying to get tenure or if I'm trying to get publications, right? In that situation, because I'm competing against the rest of the field who's also trying to do those same things as well. But like, I don't know. I just, it rubbed me the wrong way. Like I was just like, oh, you could have generalized this a little bit better for the rest of them. But I see, like, I understand where you're coming from on this.
I feel like there's got to be a version of this. I don't know what it is, but like, okay, so you're a professor currently. Like, if you were to want to climb the ladder where you're at, what is the highest level of that? There has to be something. Is it like I'm the director or the chair of this entire department? Or
Yeah, it's just too unique to the institution, right? Like, I mean,
Sure.
so it's like for me right now, it would be like, oh, okay, I want to become. I'm currently an associate professor. So for those of you that don't know anything about academia, you start off as an assistant professor, then you move to associate, then you move to full, and then from there you typically will go into administration if you want to go into administration, right?
Yes.
So it's like my thing would be to now I'm competing to get to become a full professor. But the thing that makes it artificial is like there's a timeline for that. Like I can't do it tomorrow. No matter how hard I tried. Like if I tried to tell them like, hey, I want to go up for full professor
Sure.
tomorrow, they're gonna laugh at me. They're gonna be like, no, you gotta wait. You gotta wait your standard old 5+ years before that's gonna happen. But I do need to be doing the work that's going to lead me there. So I have to think about like essentially it's competing with myself to say, am I doing the work that in 3 more years I will end up being a full professor? ? Like, you know, am I doing that?
Yeah. So the thing that comes to mind with this specific example is kind of Cal Newport. And I know it's not exactly the same. His academic experience, it sounds like, is a little bit different than yours. But I think just following his career path would be evidence of, you know, you have to wait a certain amount of years. Yes, but maybe that's not a hard number. Or maybe you do have some influence over it. And really it's tied to what do you really want out of life? Because he's kind of the champion, I would say, of people who would the champion of the message that, you know, you don't have to just accept, you know, this is the next step, and you should
Agreed.
be thinking about what you really want and having intentionality in terms of lifestyle design and crafting the life that is in alignment with the way that you want to live and your, you know, what does your rich life look like? And he would take a very academic approach to it, so it's not, you know, the life and air style messaging that comes along with that. But if you listen to his podcast, that's essentially his message, is like, what does the deep life look like for you? And then how do you design a situation where you can do that? But I do think that there's probably an inherent, you know, this is the next step for me. You know, wouldn't it be awesome if I could fill in the blank? If you really spent time thinking about it, I feel like everybody could identify something.
Yes, I'm not. So okay. So I mean, we've probably hammered on this too long, but if he'd have called this chapter "The Pillars of Fullness of Life," because he uses that phrase all over the place, right? Like, so instead of the pillars of extraordinary performance, if he'd have said the pillars of fullness of life, I think it would have resonated more with the general audience, right? Like the non-athlete general audience. Okay, let's get into the chapter. The chapter, it's really based on 3 different areas. It's based on love, wisdom, and courage. And he unpacks love, wisdom, and courage. He throws in a really interesting, kind of crazy guy swimming in the Arctic Circle, right? And how he convinces himself, and how he convinces himself to like swim. What, I don't even remember how long it was, 100 yards, you know, something like that in the Arctic Circle. But it was basically like when you get in, you have like 15 seconds before you die, and you have to swim for like 2.5 minutes or something. So how do you get in there and not die? Well, I'm not really sure how that related to love, wisdom, and courage, except for the courage part of it. But I'm sure he did a better job than I was able to grasp capturing that. So if you want to go into that, but love, basically he'll summarize as lead with your heart. Yep. Wisdom, he'll say, is expand your vision. Courage is be fully present, which I like this packaging, right? Like, so I like that he gets away from passion, right? And he gets into purpose, right? Like, I think that's a really, really strong point is this idea of love and leave it with your heart is, do you have this purpose that's actually going to allow you to stay with it? Wisdom is expand your vision, right? And it's basically like, don't get so focused in on that self-seeking, that like, you know, too narrow idea. Expand the vision about like what overall can actually help you achieve that greater purpose, something bigger than yourself. And then courage, you know, how do we actually give your best? How do you actually be present? How do you actually be grateful in this thing that you've decided is your purpose, right? And I really like the packaging of this. I like this love, wisdom, and courage packaging. I think it hits really well with me.
So he talks about Zoe here as selfless actualization, and he's got the path to Zoe, that triangle, which, you know, the choice, and then the next level is that love, wisdom, and courage that you're talking about, and then selflessness, fully engaged, resonance, and then extraordinary experiences. And I feel like that is the key to the story that he shared, but also this whole chapter is that to be fearless, you must be selfless. Okay. And this kind of ties to, in my mind anyways, the idea of The Second Mountain by David Brooks, which I think we've talked about before, and how like really the best version of whatever goal or dream you have is the one that is going to benefit other people. And that was the thing that sticks with me with that story about the guy who's swimming in the Arctic Circle in a Speedo specifically, like,
yes,
because you're trying to keep your body temperature from dropping so low that you're going to die. Like there's literally somebody in a boat watching you while you are swimming, ready to yank
not
you
just
out
watching
of the,
you.
yeah,
Like monitoring your heart to make sure you don't die.
to make sure you don't die. Yeah. Like completely ridiculous. Why would anyone want to do this? The reason that he was able to do it though, is because it was tied to a cause. Yeah. And I forget the specific cause, if it was global warming or whatever.
Yeah, climate activism or something. Yeah.
Yeah, but like the reason that he was doing this was not, to get his name in the record books. It was because he wanted to bring attention to this cause. And that I think is a really powerful idea. When you can connect to a vision that is bigger than you, then it's more powerful. And this is also where he blatantly calls out goals as being external outcomes that are not fully within your control. Right. So that's, a common thread throughout this book. And it's going to be a common thread throughout my notes because Mike is the anti-goal guy.
Yes, you are the anti-goal guy. Yes. If you could put it on your website, you should be like, hi, I'm Mike. I don't believe in goals.
That's actually not a bad idea. But the reason here, I think he adds some context. Really there's 4 daily process goals: give my best, be present, be grateful, focus on my routines and only what I can control. That is, it's hard to argue with that. So he's not getting specifically to it just yet, but there's this idea of this vision or this dream where it's bigger than you. It's something that you're moving towards, but it's not specific. It's not measurable. It's not, time-based, realistic. You're not trying to achieve this outcome by a specific time, but this is something that is super important to me. So this is what I'm going to continually be working towards. And instead of getting so focused on, well, I got to win the championship or I got to achieve this particular result, I'm going to focus on showing up every day and doing my best. I feel like there's a lot there that is very profound in terms of just the title of the book, Inner Excellence, realizing your full potential. If you took that approach, you would probably be shocked at what you're able to accomplish. So I like this chapter. And I kind of see how he's building on this, like layer on layer. You mentioned it took him 5 years to write this book. I think it's very evident because he shows a lot of restraint in sharing these ideas. This is something that I see a lot of people do, and I'm probably guilty of the same thing, where you write about something and you can talk intelligently about something, but the tendency is to share everything about the thing. And it's really hard to pare it down into, no, I'm just going to talk about this time. And in context of a book where you've got 11 chapters and they have to build on each other, it can be even more difficult because of what you mentioned at the beginning. Tell them what you're going to tell them what you told them. Right. So he does a really good job of isolating specific things. And I think if you're not careful, the downside of that is that you lose some of the ways that all this stuff ties together.
Yeah. I did not resonate with the Zoe stuff. So it just didn't click with me, and it still doesn't click with me. So it's like we could remove that whole section of the description of it and like the way he unpacks different things. Cool. The words I could just not do with it. But there are 2 things that come out of this chapter as well that I can't move on without saying. The Theodore Roosevelt quote, right? And I'm going to read the whole thing because it's our podcast and I get to do that. Right? Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows neither victory nor defeat. I love that quote. That's it. He made the chapter title based on that, but it's basically like, get in the game. You're gonna lose some, you're gonna win some, but you're better off for playing, as opposed to being apathetic and sitting on the sideline. And I'm like, yes, absolutely, 100%. That's wonderful. The other one I can't walk away from this chapter without saying is the unmasterable. To be unmasterable, be unembarrassable, unoffendable, and unirritatable. And I think the reason why that clicks with me so much is because it is so hard to do that. It is
Yes.
so hard to be unembarrassable, unoffendable, and unirritatable. And it's like, but I see so much power in that. Like if I could figure out a way, to not be embarrassed by something or to not be offended by something, it's like, wow, what control you would have over so many aspects of your life. Like I mean, it's awesome. Like and I'd never heard anybody present it that way. Like I think that's awesome.
Yep. Totally agree.
All right, so let's move to chapter 5, the Code of the Samurai. The samurai thing kind of caught me out of nowhere, right? Like I wasn't really ready for us to start talking about samurais, but here we go. Code of the Samurai, how a group of warriors came to master their ego. We get into this idea of ego again. A couple of things that stand out for me in this chapter. He's got this 5-step process: beauty before bed. Review the day from start to finish, find 3 beautiful moments, reprogram the mistakes and let go of the day, preview tomorrow, visualize. And I just think if you actually got used to this practice, it's a gratitude practice in my mind, right? Like, so what are you doing? You're reviewing your day, you're identifying gratitude. He says beauty, right? But in my mind, I would identify gratitude. And then you're saying like, and I messed up a bunch of times, and here are the ways I messed up. Let that go and restart, and let that go and restart. That was a big one. The other one, so for the folks who listen to the bootleg version of the show, you heard me talk about this, but he talks about discomfort and suffering. Brings up the book Chop Wood, Carry Water, which I've always wanted to read. So we're probably going to be looking at that one here in a couple books. But like this idea of discomfort is part of life, and we try to avoid discomfort. We try to avoid not being happy or not being joyful or never feeling any pain. And it's just not realistic, right? Like that isn't a realistic part of our life, that we just need to accept the fact that we are going to have times that are uncomfortable. We're going to have times where we actually suffer. And that's part of living in this world. And those 2 points were 2 of the ones I'll talk about right now. But those were 2 major points out of this chapter for me.
Yeah, so the name, the Code of the Samurai, I forget the specifics of the story here, but it starts with this guy who was training to be a samurai, and then basically, like, as soon as he got done, the time of the samurai was basically over.
Yep. Yeah.
So at that point, the question would be like, well, was that a complete waste of time? Like, what do I do with this vow that I made? And that is the tipping point, essentially. So there's a figure here, 5.1, the lifeline of suffering and growth. And suffering is in the middle. Now, in the last chapter, we talked about Zoe, and then there's also the fear piece, that triangle, that was from chapter 2. Okay, so then the Zoe triangle goes on top of that. The choice is in the middle, right? The choice now is anchored in suffering, and you stack these together, you've got the life diamond. That actually is from the previous chapter. But then here he shows the lifeline of suffering and growth, and it's a much simpler diagram where there's the thing in the middle, the suffering, and then you have a choice. You can either embrace it or you can resist it. And that determines the direction that you're going to be going, up towards Zoe or down towards fear in the visual that he's described here. Now, this is interesting to me because you kind of hit on the word passion earlier, and I probably say this every other episode. That word does not mean what most people think it means. And I love that he has identified suffering here in the middle as like, we're all going to suffer. How are we going to deal with it? Because a large part of suffering is simply thinking that we shouldn't suffer. As Westerners, we're driven to be happy. However, without pain, there's no growth. So what is actually worth suffering for? And that's really where the word passion comes in, because the root of the word passion is the Latin word pati. It literally means to suffer. So you're going to suffer. Are you going to embrace it because you're connected to the vision? Why am I suffering? It's in service of this greater good. And when you do that, your perspective widens and you grow. That's the, going up in the diagram that he shares. But if you resist it and you're like, oh, this is wrong, I shouldn't be feeling any sort of pain, I should be happy all of the time, which is how most people think of passion. Then you resist it, your perspective narrows, your pain increases. That leads to a very narrowly focused, fear-driven life where you're just trying to protect the status quo.
Yep.
So I 100% agree with this, and this resonates incredibly with me. I love this visual. I think this is a great way to describe this. He's got a quote here at the end, which I love. Live as though you'll die tomorrow and prepare as though you'll live forever.
Yeah.
I mean, if I was going to take an action item that there's no way I'll ever complete from this book, that would be it. I've got some different action items. That's not actually an action item for me, but like, that's really what you're after. And he speaks to this so, I was going to say intelligently, but that's not really it. It's really clear.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of, like, what's that book that we read of the conversation between the two people?
Courage. The Courage
to be disliked. Yeah. Where you kind of like, it's wrapped in a narrative and you have to kind of tease out the things.
Yeah.
Jim Murphy is like telling you exactly how it is. And you really, when he explains it, it's like, yeah, I can totally see that. Now, what are you going to do with it? That's the hard part. You know, he talks about the 8 attachments here, where it's how others see you, your money and your possessions, what you want. So your goals, again, you know, goals are bad. Not just me. Jim Murphy would say that too. Yep. Comfort, your past, how things are, the status quo, your expectations, and yourself. So a large part, I think, of this suffering is related to these attachments, and breaking free from those is kind of the basis, I would argue, of the next 6 chapters. But yeah, loving it so far.
Yeah. So I called out, I wasn't going to let us get past this without the 8 attachments. Cause I mean, there are just these gems within this book that, like, I think I'm going to review these over and over and over again, you know, throughout life. It's going to be like, oh yeah, I remember in Inner Excellence, you know, he talked about blah, blah, blah. I have an action item coming out of this chapter as well. He makes a statement in here that the best way to get a lollipop from a kid is to give the kid a better reward. And I was like, that's a genius statement, right? Like, so my thing is, what's my better reward, right? And it ties into, what do I dream about? What do I worry about? What do I get upset about? Which was my last action item. And like, if I analyze that and I say, like, it's a thing, but it's not the thing that I want it to be, what's the better reward? Like, what is my better reward? And can I figure that out? So my 2 action items link together, I think, but it's not like a one and done thing. It's something that I'm going to be constantly thinking about. Like, right now, am I going for the better reward? And if not, what's the better reward? So my second action item comes out of chapter 5. Are you ready to go to 6?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So 6, change your state, change your life, how to control your emotions. The crux of this chapter is the idea that thoughts drive feelings, feelings drive behaviors, behaviors drive results. And basically, he then unpacks each of those into the details of what it is. So he has a whole section on thoughts and beliefs. He has a whole section on feelings. He has a whole section on behaviors and then results as well, which I can't say much about this chapter other than I just thought it was really well done. And I think that he does a really good job on unpacking these ideas. I think if I have to kind of say something about it, like, I think the thing that was the most revealing part to me, or the most, I don't want to say interesting, but the most revealing part to me was the idea of focus, the soft focus, narrow focus, and open focus. I had never heard anybody talk about focus like that before, and I really liked that. Like, I really liked the way he talked about soft focus being like, kind of like, it's just kind of happening in the background. Narrow focus is that whole, like, I'm tractor beamed on a thing, right? And then open focus is I'm willing to allow other things to influence what I'm focused on right now, and I'm willing to learn from that. And I just really like the way he pitched those ideas of focus.
Yeah, that's one of my action items, is to practice that softer focus.
Yeah.
And he's got a whole bunch of lists in these different chapters, but you can tell, like, these are things that he's worked with his clients in specific situations because they needed to achieve a specific result, and so they work. And he's got lots of stories to share, you know, how they worked. But the softer focus was something that stands out to me. And this is really just priming the pump for, like, why you need to change your state, change your life. He's not getting into the specifics of exactly how to do that yet. He does share that our brains make decisions based on patterns, and there's 4 different types of patterns. There's assumptions, things we assume to be true without proof; generalizations, which are patterns from memories or similar events that we use to make predictions about the future; deletions, where we pay attention to some aspects of our experience while ignoring others; and then distortions, where your brain gives too much meaning to a particular pattern. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of why you need to be able to change your focus and change your state here. But the biggest takeaway for me from this chapter is kind of a couple parts here. So number one, what gets your attention gets you. And then your attention, that reminds me of the liminal thinking thing by Dave Gray and how it's like one small part of what is actually knowable. And so to briefly talk about that visual again, there's everything that's knowable, there's your experience, and then your attention is like the needle on the record player. But even with your experience, like that's limited. And your experience, he says in this chapter, is your interpretation of the world based on your past and what you've come to believe about yourself and the world. So all of the assumptions, basically. The rest of the Dave Gray thing gets stacked on top of that. So I can totally see the truth in that. And I also can totally see how I slip into this.
Yeah.
So he's not directly talking about mindfulness meditation at this point, but that's totally where this is kind of leading. It's like training your brain. And I don't have a specific action item with that yet, but what this is basically doing is moving us in the direction where all those things that you think and all those things that you feel, those have an element of truth, but they are not the truth.
Mm-hmm.
And just grasping that or grokking that particular concept opens up a whole bunch more possibilities.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah. So I'll tie back into, I kind of went negative on the samurai before. He makes a quote from the Samurai Code here that I expect nothing but be prepared for anything.
Oh yeah.
And I thought that was a really good quote, because like I think where I falter many, many times is my expectations are off, that they're not right. And I think that was a really interesting, kind of way to live life. All right, let's get chapter 7. The world is flat. How to develop beliefs in line with your dreams. Goes through the stories we've been telling ourselves in our head, right? So these ideas, beliefs. He breaks down this idea of dreams versus goals again, right? And his major dividing line, I would say, so Mike, correct me if you got something different here. His major dividing line between dreams and goals is control. That like goals you don't have control over.
Yep.
Dreams you do, right? So your dreams and your beliefs you do. Would you agree with that?
Yes. And really the thing here is that like the world is flat. This is kind of hearkening back to the map is not the territory, right? So you are the one who has the power to create your own maps. He frames it a little bit different. He mentions at the beginning, everyone has a story. You are the author and the narrator of your story. So you get to choose which moments have meaning and how meaningful they are. So again, that complements the map is not the territory very nicely. We look at the world not as it is, but as we are. And our experiences create our beliefs create more of those experiences, but many of our experiences teach us what we can't do. So I feel like you kind of have to push back against those limiting beliefs, which kind of come with the experiences. He mentions that your subconscious mind goes to the past and it finds patterns or proof to confirm what you are saying. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And
really
so
is.
he's not saying, well, you just gotta, say these things over and over again and eventually they become true. But he does talk about these affirmations, which are statements about yourself regarding how you'd like to be in the future. This ties real nicely with the identity level of the PKM stack.
Okay.
So when I reframed that as identity, I was like, is this the right word? In my head, I was thinking it's really about who you are and who you want to be. But then when he described it, these affirmations, this is really, your future identity, statements about yourself regarding how you'd like to be in the future. Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense. So then from there, you've got, your ideal future, your dream, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is something that you can control. He does mention right away, and this kind of disarms like all of the things that you could possibly say as a critique against affirmations. He's like, you're not going to believe these at the beginning, of course.
Yeah.
But there are 3 reasons why it's important to picture yourself living your dream and the life that you'll have after it's achieved. This is one of the things that stood out to me the most from this entire book. It's crucial for developing the grit that'll be needed to overcome the obstacles that will come. So just by saying these affirmations, you're moving in that direction, but that doesn't mean there's not going to be a fight. The second one, your subconscious mind is constantly connecting with the pictures and feelings that you have for your life, working to make those connections a reality. Again, your subconscious mind is looking for proof. It's going to find proof. It's going to add meaning to the experiences that you've had, which are going to validate whatever belief you're going to hold.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So if you are looking for a reason why you can or why you can't, you will find it.
Yep.
You may as well look for reasons why you can.
Yeah.
It's also important to deal with any disconnect that achieving your dream might create for you in order to eliminate any subconscious sabotage. This is the thing I hadn't heard it expressed this way, but I can totally see how this happens, where people start to move towards a dream and they get excited about it. They start making progress and all of a sudden they stop. And it's like, why? You're making progress. You're moving in the right direction. This is happening. Why now are you just not doing anything with it? And I think it's because they don't, there's something that's scary or uncertain. If they really do this thing, they're going to have to reconcile something else that they don't know how that's going to happen. Yep. And so it just keeps them from taking the action. And that, I get it. That is scary. And at that moment, my advice would be to embrace like Tim Ferriss' fear setting. Like, okay, let's just play this out. Yeah. Let's take it to its logical conclusion. This worst case scenario that you're scared of, like, let's define it. Okay, so that's the worst case. Now what's the best case? The truth is probably somewhere in the middle there. And what could you do if the worst case actually happened? There's things that you could do to mitigate against that, right? And just by like unpacking it, it's not so scary anymore.
Yeah.
But
yeah. No, you're starting to see things come together, right? So as you read through this book, he starts talking about dreams. Well, if you take the dreams and you go back to the influenza virus, well, if my dreams are around the influenza virus, right? Like, are they in the right place? And then, is that going to give me that long-term, again, he uses the phrase fullness of life like a million times in this book, but it's like, is it going to give me that extraordinary performance, that fullness of life that I'm really, really driving after, that's going to actually fulfill me, that's going to achieve that greater purpose? Or is it just going to be like a short-term win? But then you tie into what you just said, Mike, like this idea of fear. And well, he would say, well, the fear comes from the ego, and the ego comes from comparing and, limiting like myself and doing all these other things. So it's like, it really all connects so well together. And it's like, it would be so hard. I read this book and I think, how on earth would I have ever come up with all of this stuff and like connected it all together and made it work? But it does, right? Like, it really, really does. This is why I said at the beginning, this book got me in certain ways, but like, it's one of those ones that I couldn't figure out if it was like one of the best books, like not ever, but you know what I mean? Like one of those really, really top books for me. All right, let's move on to 8. A clear and present beauty, the 5 most powerful ways to be fully present. He lists out the nature of this book is these 5 ways, the nature of this chapter, is these 5 ways to be fully present. Get out of your head and into your heart and soul. Focus on your routines and what you can control. Be grateful. Focus on a mantra. Ruthlessly eliminate hurry. I think the 2 that stand out for me the most in this whole section is focus on routines and what you can control, and then focus on a mantra. And I don't know whether it's because of my stage of life or where I'm at that I feel like there's like a million things going on. Some of them are under my control, some of them aren't, or that there are just these things that I need to be putting into my brain right now, right? So it ties back to the last chapter, these affirmation things, right? That it's like, I need to focus on the things that I can control and the positive things, right? These mantras that will help me advance and put good things into my brain. Those were really the 2 out of the 5 that stood out to me the most out of this whole, these whole 5 points. So go ahead.
I actually have a lot in my mind map here, but not necessarily associated with those 5 things.
Okay. All right.
I guess if you had to be specific, like if you had to pick one, it's probably to get out of your head and into your heart and soul. That this is really speaking to me, but talks about how passion is found in the present while desire is focused on the future. And so the goal here is to focus on the present. That's also where the suffering happens to be.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with that? He mentions that a mind of too many thoughts and concerns is a result of a heart that doesn't have one singular unifying vision. You can probably tell where I'm going with this at this point. The identity level of the PKM stack is your vision and your values. A big part of that is the life theme. And I actually have in my notes, he defines it as your heart's singular focus. And I would say that is what I call a life theme. Personal mission statement.
Yep.
And what that does when you connect to that is it does 2 things in my mind. Number 1, it creates the motivation that you need to show up every day and take consistent action on the things that are important. And number two, it provides the clarity to cut the things that aren't. When you connect to that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you completely blow up your life, you quit your job, you go do something totally different, although that can happen. Focused episode 165 with Chris Upchurch is example of that. But most people, most of the time, he says, are living their lives in their heads. And I don't have an action I'm associated with this, but kind of the big takeaway for me is live more out of your heart, less out of your head. The mind can only process one thing at a time, he talks about. This is where he talks about you can't feel anxious and grateful at the same time. You're far more powerful than you think you are. And then the action item I do have from this section is that ruthlessly eliminate hurry. Like that term. Have you heard that term before?
I have, yes.
Yeah. I think I know where you've heard that. Is it what's his name? John Mark Comer?
Yeah. So
Ruthless Elimination of Hurry.
I've read that book, and then I also knew it came from Dallas Willard as well. So
okay. Oh yeah, Dallas Willard. He does mention that in this chapter too. So I have actually 2 copies of that book, and I haven't read it yet. But I love that idea, like the ruthless elimination of hurry. That sounds very appealing to me. That's probably going to be a Gap book. I don't know if it makes sense as a actual bookworm book, but I will read it, and then if I think it does, I guess I'll pick it. But like that, because when you hurry, it's not, you've got so much on your schedule that you've constantly got to be moving from thing to thing. It's really the mental and the emotional state. It's not a physical one. Exactly. And that resonates with me because I tend to hurry a bit too much. He actually says in this chapter that stress is a choice. You're not stressed because of your situation. You're stressed because of how you feel about the situation. Man. And I got to figure out what I'm going to do with that because definitely have been feeling stressed lately.
You want to talk about one of those baseball bat quotes, right? Like he throws that out there and I was like, oh, wow, that one hurt. Like that was a big one.
Yeah.
I like the idea in the ruthless elimination of hurry section, the 1 year sabbatical every 7 years. Man, if we could somehow get that to be like part of our culture, that would be amazing, right? Like, so the 1 day per week, we've got that part of our culture. The take a break every 90 minutes. Okay, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like you can do that kind of without anybody noticing. Man, I really wish we could do a 1 year sabbatical every X number of years, right? I don't even care if it was 7, right? Just because I think you would gain so much and you would get so refreshed from that 1 year that like, I just think it would do so much positive for our world. I really do.
I agree. I have no idea how to even get to that point. I've been trying for a long time to take a 7th week sabbatical.
Yeah.
Where every 7th or 8th week, 7 on, 1 off, that sort of a thing. But even that is tough for me currently.
Well, and this is part of where I think like certain European countries have it more figured out than we do, right? Because they'll take like a whole month off, right? Like they'll take like the month of August off, where it's essentially like that's part of the culture. It's like what's everybody doing? Well, they're not working; they're out like taking that sabbatical and getting that rest. And it's like, man, I really wish we could figure that out in the old US of A, but. Well, not yet. Okay, so chapter 9, Unstoppable: How to Overcome Mental Blocks, Fears, and Phobias. I thought this again. I thought this chapter was really, really good. This idea of that your subconscious is your actual protector. That the reason why you have these fears, the reason why you have these worries or these phobias, isn't necessarily negative. Like the impact on your life might be negative, but they're meant for a good thing. Like they're meant for a good reason, and they were created as a protective mechanism. I thought that was a really good aspect. For the last couple chapters, he's actually started to get more practical in giving strategies to think about some of these things and to work through some of these things. And this is probably the one I want to call out the most is this idea of fixing the phobias. And he goes through these different ideas to remove the pain or reprogram, to reprogram mental blocks. And he gives, at least 4. I jotted down 4 different ways to work through these. And I just thought these were really, really powerful, like ways to work through and reprogram or rethink about these phobias and these fears. I won't go through them all just for the sake of time, but like if that's something that you wrestle with, chapter 9 is really a practical, tangible way to work through these.
Yeah, the thing that I loved from this chapter is really describing the 3 jobs of your subconscious mind, which is to sift through all the incoming sensory information to decide what's relevant to you and whether any of it is potentially dangerous, run your life in the background so you don't have to think about every little thing that you do, and line up your
Yep.
circumstances and results with your beliefs. So if that's, once you understand that this is what your subconscious mind is doing, you can kind of see how maybe it's making some errors.
Yeah. Yep.
So what can you do about that? You can give it more relevant information, I guess, in order to make those connections and identify those patterns, which is really at the heart of his 4 steps to removing mental blocks.
Mm-hmm.
But that part, it's cool if you're going to identify a specific situation where you want to apply that. But for me, the takeaway is more broad, where really our brains treat all the danger that we experience the same way. You kind of talked about that. But then also everything that we watch, read, and listen to, all of the things that we experience, those things are having an impact on our actual brains.
Yep.
So it's really important to curate your sources.
Yes. Yes.
And I feel like I've been beating that drum for a while, but this chapter just kind of adds more context for me, I guess. This is really at the heart of the whole PKM stack framework for me, because I recognize that when you are just mindlessly consuming information that the algorithms are throwing in your face, their goal is to keep you engaged with the platform regardless of what it does for you. So you consume that information, you feel like you're not creative because it influences the quantity and the quality of the ideas that you have, which also your mind, your subconscious mind is taking those ideas and it's creating this lattice work of what it thinks is actually reality, and that determines the actions that you take. Well, that's the default life. You're living it from the bottom up. But when you can anchor it in your identity, which I love that term more than anything, more than ever at this point, having gone through this book, your vision and your values, your what you believe about who you are and the world at large, what is actually possible, then that acts as the filter, and that goes from the top down now. So based on that identity, you are more selective about the things that you engage with. You have more and better ideas. And ultimately, instead of feeling FOMO because there's the answers out there somewhere and I got to consume all the things and eventually I'll find the right thing, you've got peace, you've got calm, and you are selective about the things that you're consuming because this is actually useful. I would like to think that most people who listen to Bookworm have at least a little bit embraced that mindset already. Yeah. And they're looking for something fun to listen to maybe on the way to work, but they recognize that a podcast talking about big ideas and books is more valuable than the latest Entertainment Tonight gossip or whatever it was, Yeah, exactly. I used to listen to a lot of like the ESPN talk shows, and after a while I was just like, if I miss a day, it doesn't really matter. It's fun in the moment, PTI and Around the Horn, like those were my jam.
I'm in the same boat. Like I used to do that. And then certain tech podcasts, right? It was like, if I miss, it's not that big of a deal. Right. Like, but I mean, the ideas that we're unpacking here are pretty interesting. And in this book, it's got a bunch of them. It's got a bunch of them. All right. So, chapter 10, the hero and the goat. Now, in this situation, the GOAT, which he had to say it like multiple times because he's a sports guy, it's not the greatest of all time, which is often how you hear the word GOAT referred to in sports. It was basically like the person who screwed up, or the scapegoat, if you will. And it's how to have poise under pressure. So he's trying to unpack this idea of, how do I get resonance? So he talks about resonance throughout the book. He really, I think, is this the chapter where he hits it the most? I think it is. Where he really drives home resonance. Okay.
Yeah, because he's got 3 things that get in the way of the flow state and resonance, which is overanalysis, a cluttered mind, self-consciousness, which is concern for what people may think if you perform poorly or choke, and then constant judging of circumstances and results. Yep. And the big thing from this, like the flow state and resonance, heard that before. I like the framing of resonance here, but the big takeaway for me is like trying to beat your opponent is a distraction. There's a quote. He says, "I expect nothing. I can handle anything." And that anything that you can't control is how it's supposed to be. Those are very challenging thoughts that I really got to wrestle with.
Oh yeah. Anything you can't control is how it's supposed to be. It's like, oh man, and that's where the practical side of me gets a little too like, that's a little too fluffy, right? But I don't think it is. I think it's just like you said. I think the way you described it's much better. Is I really got to wrestle with that. Like that's an important concept, an important idea.
Yeah. So if you think about anything that you can't control is how it's supposed to be. I mean, going back to the story about the swimmer with the Speedo in at the North Pole, it doesn't mean that you're not trying to affect change, but really when I think about that, it's really the circumstances around me that I don't like. Those are the natural output of the systems at work in the world. Mm-hmm. So it's not worth getting upset because this is the way that the dice landed. It's really, this is the result of the system. So you can fight to make change in the system, I would argue. But there's an element here of, I don't know, maybe it's like cosmic insignificance theory where it's like, well, the world is going to world and I'm going to try to make the impact that I can, but also it's not all up to me. I'm not going to change everything for everyone. And that actually is very freeing, not to put that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so I get another action item out of this one. So, Mike, I can't believe you don't have any action items yet. Like, what are you doing here? Right?
I do actually. They just haven't really fit in with the conversation that we're having, so I'll add them at the end.
He outlines four keys to performing with poise and resonance. And I won't go through them all, but like the fourth one is visualize presence, not perfection. And there's an action item in here that's visualize the path to mastery. And I'll go through these details. Preview the path to mastery for 5 minutes. Try to find confidence memories that will make that better. Make it ridiculous. So imagine like the most dramatic, crazy, worst thing happening in the world. And I think his example here was golf, right? Like you're on the 18th hole, you got to make a putt and it's like hailing and torrential downpours and 100 miles per hour winds. Like make it ridiculous, but you're still able to do that. You're still able to succeed in that path to mastery. Then relaxation, reframe, sequences of success, and then role models and mentors are all around this idea of visualizing your path to mastery. And it's like, I want to do that. Like, I don't know what context I'm going to do it in right now, but like, I really want to go through that thought exercise of visualizing the path to mastery in the thing that I think I want to be a master in. It's just, I got to figure out what that is. So
nice.
Yeah.
One other thing here, and then I'll kick off chapter 11, but the idea of resonance, the effortless excitement, like that's a really cool framing of it.
Yeah.
What are you naturally excited about?
Yeah. That's
a cool definition there. All right. So the last chapter is Maslow, Michael Jordan, and the Navy SEALs. That is a great title, by the way. This one is talking about, well, the things that I jotted down here are really about an inspiring vision for the future, and then being a good leader, essentially giving people the tools that they need to learn and grow. In fact, at the beginning, he talks about when you have an inspiring vision for the future and you give people the tools that they need to learn and grow, they will do whatever task they face with greater proficiency as well as with incredible loyalty. He talks about how the greatest coaches do a couple of things. They redefine success. They connect individuals with a vision beyond themselves, and they seek self-mastery and help others do the same. There's 4 different values of the Golden State Warriors, which I'm a basketball fan, so this resonates with me. I mean, Steph Curry is ridiculous, so maybe that's a little bit of a bias here towards success. Like if you take him off the team, maybe they don't have the success that they have had. But joy, compassion, mindfulness, and competition. I think that's a really cool idea. And then the big thing that stands out to me from this, just because of where I'm at and the whole, like my thinking on the topic of leadership and stuff like that. Leadership is essentially communication, or said another way, sales. If you're leading somebody, you are selling them on the idea that you can help them get to where they're going to be. I mentioned earlier the online sales stuff, help people become healthy, wealthy, or wise. That's essentially what this is, right? Now, everything that you do and say communicates something. Ouch. So if I'm not being intentional about the things that I am doing and saying, I am doing and saying things that are maybe communicating a very different message than what I had hoped to communicate.
Yes.
And I got to take responsibility for that. No one is responsible for that except for me. It doesn't matter what I'm going through. It doesn't matter what I'm feeling. Ultimately, people are watching me and I have a responsibility to them to do the right thing. He also talks about pacing and leading, which is an interesting idea. I'd not come across this before, but pacing is basically where you gain rapport by matching the other person's posture and physiology, tone, and words in a subtle way. So it's sort of like you're mirroring them or mimicking them. What's that concept? Matching? I don't know. Where like if you're walking with somebody, you find yourself walking in step with them. That's essentially what this is. Like do that before you would ever try to lead somebody, get them to change, go in a different direction, which is so brilliant and so much more effective than so many other things that I have heard said so many other ways. Like forget all that crap. Just do this and you'll get better results.
I would never have thought of it or worded it this way at all. But it's like, this is like, I can want to teach a student a concept as much and I can be so passionate about teaching them a concept. And if they're not there, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
So I have to meet them where they are and then get them to the level I want to get them to, or else it's just, you're beating your head off the wall. You talked about the whole talking to the person, but really talking to everybody else. Man, you want to talk about a gut punch. Like I read this one and I was like, oh shoot. Like, so you have multiple children, I have multiple children. And it's like, oh, well, when you're disciplining the other child, you're really talking to all of the children, right? Like and I was like, oh man, like that is so true. You're coaching soccer, you're coaching flag football, you're coaching whatever you're coaching. When you're teaching the person to do what you want them to do, you're really teaching the entire team. Yeah. And I was like, oh my goodness, like this is so, like if nothing else, that statement alone is like life-changing. Might be too dramatic, but at the same time, I don't know if it's true, because it's like it changes your whole approach to how you talk and interact with people. Like, it was just so good. It was just so good.
I don't think it's an overstatement, to tell you the truth. I think it's probably accurate. The other thing that I liked out of here, well, two other things. One, he mentions like a throwaway comment: every goal that you ever set and every result that you ever get is in the past or the future.
Yep. Yeah.
So it kind of doesn't matter. Right. But then the other one is the story of John Wooden, who I really like John Wooden. And I did not know this about him, but apparently he didn't scout other teams and he didn't recruit. So basically he was just focused on getting the most out of the players that he had. And in the author's words, the talent came to him, which is pretty amazing. If that is true, and I don't doubt that it is, like that's a message that'll preach right there.
Yeah. Oh yes, it will. All right. So we need to start wrapping this up. But we've got a conclusion, and then Mike, I don't know if you want to talk about it or not. We talk real quick. I don't need to talk about the professional athlete's experience with Inner Excellence, like the testimonials. Like I'm good not talking about those. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, cool. So there, if you didn't read the book yet, there's a whole section, or like it's like 3 like little mini chapters where he gets people's experience. A professional golfer, a ski jumper, like a water ski jumper, and then a third one that I don't remember right now. But let's go to the conclusion. So it's titled "Conclusion: A New Way of Life." In this one, I didn't get a ton out of this. It was really, in my mind, he was recapping a lot of what he's already talked about in the book. But the short little phrase, or short little series of phrases that I got out of this was steady hand, clear mind, unburdened heart. Right? That if you can focus life with a steady hand, a clear mind, and an unburdened heart, you're on a path to inner excellence, as he would say it, or where you want to be. And I was like, wow, okay, like there it is. Other than that, I didn't get a ton out of the conclusion.
Yeah, it's just a couple of pages. So I jotted down: more than anything, we get in our own way. Continually adjust your map of the world to include the unseen. And then he mentions the concept again, which was a theme throughout the book, of living wholeheartedly. And that stands out to me because I met a woman at Sean Blanc's Focus Like a Boss workshop. Her name was Amy, and I'm blanking on her last name now. She was a guest on Focus, so I will put the link to that in the show notes. But she basically has a business where she helps people take the Enneagram assessment and then apply it to their lives. And that has both personal application, your working in the way that's authentic to your true self, the way that you're wired, but then also interpersonal application where if I'm wired this way, you're wired that way, we got to figure out how to work together.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that is a really cool idea. And that's where I first heard the term wholeheartedness or living wholeheartedly. And I think that is a really cool idea. I think it's a great way to encapsulate the book. Like if you are going to apply inner excellence, what does that look like? What does success look like? It is living with your whole heart and less out of your head. And that's just, my 2 cents on this. And obviously my perspective is mine based on my experiences and things. So maybe it's just, that's what spoke to me, but that is, I think, a great way to wrap this up.
Yeah. All right. So I've talked about my action items. I'll recap those real quick as Mike's thinking about the ones he's going to put down, but I've got 3 of them. So my action items coming out of this book are, what do I dream about? What do I worry about? What do I get upset about? Because those are really where I'm focusing. And am I okay with that? Like, do I like those? That's number 1. Number 2 is, what is my better reward than the quote unquote lollipop, right? Like, so what is my better reward than the thing that's distracting me, than the thing that's getting in the way of, this idea of inner excellence? And then the third one is trying to visualize a path to mastery in the area that I want to be in. So it's like, I don't know exactly what that area is right now, but those are the 3 action items I get out of this. So Mike, whenever you're ready, hit us with your action item.
All right. So the first one, I did mention this actually, but we didn't spend a whole lot of time here practicing the softer focus. So that is, I'm really good at narrowly focusing. This is the thing that I got to get done. I got to block out all the distractions, crank out the newsletter, make the thing. Softer focus is more just like taking a step back. It's kind of the mindfulness meditation aspect of this. And again, that's not the specific action item here, but just not getting so attached to what I'm doing and what I am feeling in the present moment. So there's probably a lot of different ways that I could practice that, but that is a specific action item. And that comes from, which chapter was that? Chapter 6, changing your state, changing your life. So controlling the state, that's basically the goal there. The next one is to create daily affirmations. So I mentioned a little bit about the affirmations and why it's important to picture yourself living your dream and the life that you'll have after it's achieved. I recognize that I kind of wrote off the affirmations a while ago. And then when he said, you're not going to believe them at the beginning, it sort of challenged the validity of that. Cause I'd kind of written it off like that, that's not for me. But then when he said that, it's like, well, maybe I didn't just stick with it long enough. So I want to actually create some affirmations and start saying those every day. See if I can't get that to stick this time. And then the other one, and again, I'm not picking this for Bookworm, but read The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. This has come on my radar multiple times, as evidenced by the fact that I have bought it multiple times. Yeah. And that idea of eliminating hurry, that speaks to a pain point that I'm experiencing right now. So I'm going to pick that as a gap book.
Nice. All right, let's go to style and rating. It's my book, so I will start us off. I told you at the beginning I was conflicted about it. I think through the conversation, I've realized that the book, while I knew the book had a bunch of value, right? Like as I was reading it, I knew that there was a lot valuable, to come out of this book. I don't think I realized as much until you and I had this conversation and kind of the impact that the book I think is going to have on me long term. I said it last episode with Tiny Experiments, but it's very, very similar with this book. That like this is one of those ones I just want to read again. Like I already want to read this book again, but I wish that it was a little bit tighter. Like if that makes sense, right? Like and I know you said like there's a lot of ideas in here and he does a good job like making them concise and I agree with you on that. I don't disagree with you on that point. But there is still just I want it to be a little bit tighter. So I didn't go back and look at like, from preface to conclusion, to the end of the conclusion, how many pages it was. Mike, I don't know if you know off the top of your head roughly how many it was.
I think it was like 268.
Yeah, like so there was just a little bit too much, right? For me, for some reason there. Like I wanted it to be a little bit tighter. and I think it could have been a little bit tighter. So that is going to be kind of my biggest knock on the book in terms of like what he talked about. In terms of, do I think it's going to apply, or do I think it can apply to your life? Absolutely. There were a few times where the language he uses is not the language I would use, but I'm not going to knock somebody on that. Like, that's just a difference in style. I think that I would be shocked if in 5 years, if you and I have a conversation about this book, Mike, and I don't come back to you and go, man, that was one of the books that had the most impact on me and the way I like actually do things and the way I actually operate in my daily life. I would be really surprised. I just think there are nuggets of wisdom and nuggets of truth in this book that I'm going to pull back on and pull back on and pull back on. This book, I didn't make it an action item, and I'm not going to make it an action item, but this book is one of those books that like makes me think I need a better way to resurface these ideas more regularly, because I think there are so many good ideas in this book that I want them to resurface, and I want to not forget about them. I want to not push them away and not think about them. So I think I'm going to rate this book. I'm going to give this book a 5-star rating. I think this is a 5-star book.
All right.
Even though I had a couple little smaller things that I would say, like, probably not my style, but that's okay. I think it's a 5-star book based on the content, primarily on the content. So, Mike, go ahead.
All right. Well, there was a thing in the back of the book where he mentions you can get some additional tips and things by joining the newsletter. And it's not like a toolkit necessarily. It's literally just the newsletter, looking at his website. So I haven't actually done that. Maybe he does have some resources there though, which could do what you were describing, help resurface these things without having to reread a 268-page book.
Yep.
That being said, I absolutely love this book. I'm going to give it 5 stars as well. And I disagree. I think that it could have been a little bit tighter. I'm not sure what I would have cut. All the stories that he shared, I felt like were relevant. Some of them maybe were a little bit hard to relate to because I'm not a world-class athlete.
Valid.
But
valid.
Also, like, that's who this is written for. So this is really speaking not to where I'm at, but like where I would like to be. And I think it's generally applicable to just about anybody. I was a little bit surprised to hear you talk at the beginning about how you had a little bit of trouble generalizing it to your situation, but I guess I can see that. But I think that it's probably a way to do that if you're willing to put in the work and dig through it.
Oh, I think so too.
So I don't think I would hesitate to recommend this to anybody. The only one that's not going to really like this is the person who really isn't into self-development yet. Like, they're maybe kicking the tires and they don't like reading the books yet. So they're listening to Bookworm and they're hoping to grok the big ideas, or you think Blinkist is the best thing on earth. And so you read the 15-minute things and you're like, there, I got it. Then don't bother with this one. Yeah. But if you are going to put in the work and put some weight on the bar when you go to the gym, this is, you're going to get some results from this. I feel, I think it, honestly, if you apply these concepts that he's talking about, I think it would be hard not to see some sort of positive change.
Oh, I agree. Agree completely.
Yeah. Now, is there a version of this which maybe is a little bit more practical and applicable? I think maybe there is. I think maybe it is another book that he wrote called The Best Possible Life, which was released November 7th of last year. Have you seen this one?
I haven't seen that one. No.
So this is a shorter 191-page paperback on Amazon currently. If you were to design the best possible life you could imagine, what would you include? Perhaps a beautiful house on the water, deep enriching relationships, a job you love, days filled with joy, meaning, free from anxiety and doubt. And it's helping you craft this is my impression. I just ordered it. I have not looked at this yet. But essentially, the subtitle here is How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. And the title is kind of like this pencil sketch. This is the blueprint. And I feel like this is something that's really powerful. I try to help people do this with the life theme stuff. So I'm 100% on board with this idea already. If you're a little bit skeptical, maybe it's not for you. definitely not what I expected. To be honest, I figured this would be very like corporate. Here's how you know, crush the sales and
Yeah.
that sort of thing. That's not it at all. It skews way more towards the world-class athlete, the top performer. And I think maybe that is going to be a little bit hard for some people to relate to as well.
Yep.
But also it's aspirational. Like we're not in that situation, but everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, people who have bought into the idea of personal development to a certain degree, I think all have a little bit of that deep down. And so like, if that is what you're after, it's hard to think of a better resource currently. I thought this would be, too big of a leap. I wouldn't be able to picture myself applying the concepts from this book. I thought it would be kind of over my head, to be honest. Because I'm not a PGA Tour golfer, which is what all the blurbs are from. I'm not Tiger Woods. I'm not trying to set any world records. But yeah, I was very pleasantly surprised. And great book.
Good. So that is what do we call them, Mike? Golden book?
Yep.
Yeah, it's a golden book. It's a double 5-star.
Check the chapter art.
Yeah. All right. So let's go to upcoming books next. Mike, you have our next book, and what is it?
Yeah, the next book is one that I picked up a while ago, but haven't actually started reading yet, and that is The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. Shared last time I heard Sahil talk at a Craft and Commerce a couple of years ago when he was just starting the process of building the email list in order to launch this book. He's had a very successful launch. It's kind of cool to see the success that he's had because he was pretty successful at the time. He had 100-some thousand people on his email list, but he's grown a ton since then. And I just really like his message, his style. I think this is going to be a really good one that is going to, again, be very challenging. Maybe we should have picked a fluffier book in between, but yeah, this is going to be a good one, I think.
Awesome. All right. My next book, so if you're tracking along with us, will be called Wild Courage, Go After What You Want and Get It. This comes from Mike, recommendation from Mike. The tagline of it is, to be successful, you need to be weird, selfish, shameless, obsessed, noisy, manipulative, brutal, reckless, and bossy, and that takes courage. So that's a very intriguing tagline for us, and I'm excited to see what this one's all about. So I like it when Mike gives me good book recommendations.
Hopefully,
Mike,
this is a good one. I haven't read it yet.
Well, I'm sure it can't be that bad, right? Do you have any Gap books right now for us?
I do. I mentioned The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry by John Mark Comer. I'm not sure how to pronounce his last name. Sorry. This has been one that has popped up on my radar multiple times. It was not referenced explicitly in this book, but the term was used, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, and definitely something that is relevant to me right now. So nice. I want to at least start that book. No promises I'll finish it because The 5 Types of Wealth is a pretty big one, but
yeah. I am not taking on a Gap book right now. That doesn't mean I won't have something in my ears. But that's not that's listening. That's not reading. So
that's right.
But at the same time, I can't take on another one, especially with the 5 Types of Wealth coming up. So
that's fair.
With that, let's go ahead and put Inner Excellence on the shelf. Let's pick up the 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom. If you are interested in this, we started an experiment today where we are doing a video live stream version of the show. So for the pro show listeners, the folks on the Patreon, we're pumping this to a post on Patreon that you can follow along there with us as we record live. You'll get to see our mugs as we talk about the book, and we'll have our little logo down there. And as far as I think, it went successfully today. So we're going to keep doing this as we go through. Or other benefits of becoming a member. A Patreon subscriber would be you get a bookworm wallpaper, you get the bootleg version of the show. So from the moment we start the call, you're going to get that version of the show. You also get a pro show. So when we start selling ads, which we have a few coming up here
We do.
in the near future, those will be scrubbed from the recording. And I'm trying to think, Mike, what else?
That's the
like
big
I'm missing
thing.
something.
Nope.
Yeah. So those are happening right now. If you're interested, it's patreon.com/bookwormfm. It's $7 a month, and it just helps us support the show through hosting and the different things that we need in order to keep the show going. So thanks for everybody who supports us, and thanks for anybody who can support us in the future.
All right. So if you're reading along with us, pick up The 5 Types of Wealth by Sahil Bloom, and we'll talk to you in a couple of weeks.
See y'all.